I hope that everybody's been reading their newspapers because there was a rather big announcement just, I think, 24 hours ago. Perhaps we could just start with the news. You've been pretty good at raising some money, it seems.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. We did just announce that we've raised our Series D, $16 billion, which gives us the opportunity to really focus on taking this fully autonomous service that we've been running across 6 cities in the United States and scale globally, which we're quite excited to do.
And just give the audience some idea of where we are in the journey of Waymo. How many people now are, every week, for example, getting in a Waymo and enjoying the experience with you?
So currently we give about slightly over 400,000 trips per week across 6 US cities. And so in case you're not familiar with Waymo, what that means is you use an app, you hail a ride, it shows up, there's no human behind the wheel, you get in the vehicle, it takes you in your own space from point A to point B. And for us, we really emphasize being able to do that with delight as well as safety. And so in 2025 alone, we gave 15 million rides. And in our lifetime, we've given 20 million rides. So last year was a really important year. And it's an inflection point where our technology, which we affectionately refer to as the Waymo driver, has moved from proof of concept, like, can this work? Will riders pay for it? Will they incorporate it into their daily lives? To now focusing on scaling globally. And so we are focused on, currently, we have a fleet of cars in London and a fleet of cars in Tokyo, and we've announced a host of new cities across the US. And so 2026 and beyond is sort of the time when Waymo really focuses on velocity, always focused on safety, and bringing this life-saving technology to more cities. And we're very proud to do that because so far we've been able to demonstrate that every city in which we drive, we actually have a meaningful impact on the safety of the roads. And so currently it's a 90% reduction in injury-harming crashes. And so that allows us to be 10 times safer than a human driver. And that's really important to us. That's the reason that we are founded, and we're on a mission to be the world's most trusted driver.
So just on that point, when people ask you the why do we need a Waymo? What will it add to our city, our mobility story? Is this the key question, really, the key answer you give? It's about safety. If you just look at the numbers of fewer people who will die, be seriously injured, have a problem because of a car crash, that's the top answer, really, is it for you?
I think safety, we have to be significantly safer than a human to earn the right to be on the roads. If we're not safer than a human, then we're just simply like every other car on the road. So for us, that's foundational. So making sure that we can drive a safety impact, not just for fatalities, but all of the people who are living with life-altering injuries. So being able to address both of those. And then, because we are satisfied with where we are in safety, we get to focus on things like giving time back. You get into the car, you can have your confidential conference calls, you can have your time to take a nap, there's no one in there with you. And then it's use cases that are very important to people. Late night travel for women traveling alone. We have a teen product in Phoenix where 14 to 17-year-olds are able to go to, their athletic appointments after school on their own. There are all of these additional use cases. And then, access to mobility options for the hundreds of thousands of people globally who will never have the opportunity to have a driver's license. And so if you can't have a driver's license, then you will always be driven by someone, which means you are never in a car by yourself until you are in a Waymo. And we've had so many magical moments with people who shared that first time, not a girlfriend, not a parent, not a ride-hail driver, not a limo driver, not a taxi driver. They were in a car going safely from point A to point B, with vision impairment, with epilepsy, you name it, they had that experience. I think that sort of, magical and transformational experience, those are the use cases we couldn't have imagined that were needed. And so that's really exciting. So safety is foundational, and then there's just a world of delight on top of that.
And just while we're here, I know that you started off in city cores, places where you've geo-mapped them for the vehicles, but now you're breaking out as well. You're on highways as well now.
We are. We started our first service in 2020. We removed the human from behind the car. And so over 5 years ago, and then we moved to, San Francisco, Los Angeles, sort of denser areas where dealing with pedestrians and delivery trucks and density was a big part of what the Waymo driver had to learn. The learning is shared across the fleet. And when I refer to the driver, I am talking about the suite of technology, hardware, software, cameras, LiDAR, radar. That's what we refer to when I say the Waymo driver. And, when we're here, we're sitting in Dubai, we're at the World Government Summit. When we think about cities around the world that are really appealing, we think about cities like Dubai. We think about territories and regions where the governments are very innovative. They're forward thinking. They're interested in investing in a future that's safer, that's more convenient, and that's technologically driven for value.
Now tell me, you mentioned Dubai, you look at the UAE, I think you have one or two competitors in this world who are already eyeing up this market as well. When you look at the competition, because other players are saying, look, we have different AI systems, or we're going to use cameras to make this a more affordable way, perhaps in the future, of delivering autonomous vehicles. Some people are making their own vehicles. There's lots of different routes through this. At this point, I think it's widely accepted you're way out in front, Waymo out in front, as it were. I'll give you that one.
That was funny to me.
And tell me, when you look at the competition, what sets you apart from the competition?
Oh, that was funny. So I think first and foremost, it's that we have been maniacally focused on safety. Like, starting with safety, I think, means that we made some deliberate choices in the beginning. And so I think this goes back to how we approach and build the technology, how we approach and build the culture at our company. In the early days, having a culture where everyone could raise a red flag, where we didn't just talk about safety, but we lived towards the safety. Now driving the output data and sharing it transparently, like all of that to us, there isn't anyone else doing that. And to us, that's part of the social contract. We're introducing a technology on roads, next to, houses of worship, next to schools, next to homes. We need to be willing to be transparent about how this technology works, how it's performing, and why we believe it's safe enough to be in communities. And so that's the biggest differentiation in addition to the technological investments that we've made. We're the only company that's been at this for 17 years. We know what it takes, and we also know how close the end can feel. And so getting started is easy. Going all the way to full autonomy and then to delighting riders is quite a journey.
What do you need in a partner? Again, I think World Governments Summit is always extraordinary because in the room there are exactly the people you need to be talking to about being partners in this process. And I can't imagine to get one of those vehicles on a road, I presume there's numerous agencies and government level organizations you have to deal with. What do you need from partner cities and partner countries if they want you to come in and work with them? Do you need somebody to change legislation quickly? What kinds of things are needed from that kind of planning stage?
I think first and foremost, we need cities and countries that recognize the value of the technology. Because I think a lot of legislation around the world imagined that there would be a human driver. And I think with just the smallest amount of imagination, you remove that sort of constraint, if you will, from legislation, and then you actually realize we can focus on what is Waymo's safety case? Like, what can we demonstrate in order to make the government comfortable that this is safe enough? We have a lot. on the line. It's really important to us that our do-say ratio is very high. And so working with governments who can be creative, who are not sort of locked in to language of the past, because this was never contemplated. And then I think who are also thinking about their own future, like they have their own technology roadmap. They know where they want to be. Which is one of the reasons this region is so exciting, because they've already given thought to what that future looks like. And then outside of governments, we've been really focused on building an ecosystem of AV partners. We are solving what we think of as the engineering challenge of this generation, making sure this technology can safely move people from point A to point B. And then you have partners. We've partnered around the world. We have a partner, Move, who actually has a large presence here. They're our fleet operating partner in a couple of cities. We've partnered with network operators. We've partnered with, integration companies that actually affix the Waymo driver to base vehicles. We have automotive company partners. We're not building a car, as you said. And so it's really important to us to not have a go-it-alone approach. There's a whole ecosystem that will flourish in light of this, and we're all doing great business by doing good, because this really is driving change and saving lives.
So if I manage to get through to you on the phone and say, Tekedra, we need your help, what's the kind of timeline from connecting with the city to potentially having Waymo on the road? What's so far been that timeline for delivery?
I think it can go quite fast, and it can also go quite slow, and a little bit of that depends on the government. A little bit of that depends, in some cities where there's no blockers. We launched in Miami at the beginning of this year, and we started mapping in Miami late last year, and we've launched. And so it doesn't take a lot of time. The driver is generalizable, and that's the way that we've built it, not only to be across different vehicle platforms, but also different environments, temperatures, climates. And so it's just really important to us to be able to do that. But part of your question depends on where and how many blockers there are that are kind of beyond our control, and how solid of a partnership we can build with that either, city or state in order to advance the introduction of the technology. And just to be clear, when we look at the stats globally of 1.2 million people being killed on the roads, we feel strongly that safety is urgent and that we should be doing this. And we've actually had, it's been really interesting to watch people in the medical community come out and make the point that if a drug had the results of Waymo, it would be irresponsible for governments to not start adopting this technology and to keep waiting for more and more trials. And so, it's really exciting to see other people starting to make the case in light of the data that we're making available transparently.
If we get to the inflection point where, say, more than 50% of all journeys are done in AVs, how will that change how our cities look?
I think that over time we will see, and we're seeing it, in a lot of cities already, people deciding how many cars they need, sort of core, especially as, younger people in the family age into driving, whether or not those folks will even need to have their own car. I think that's one place. And one place that cities talk to us a lot about is parking infrastructure. They're really excited to not need so many cars sitting idly during the day in city centers. And they'd love to recapture that space and redevelop it for use, because now you can get dropped off and get picked up and you don't have to deal with the parking.
And tell me, internationally, where does Waymo go? You've mentioned London. I think when I was getting the car to the airport, I actually saw one of your mapping vehicles. It was a sign, I think. This was all going to go very well. So I saw the mapping vehicle. London, where else? We're here in the UAE. Would you like to see a bit more Waymo action here?
So we are in, as you said, our cars are in London, and we have a fleet in Tokyo. Those are two markets that we're really focused on right now. And yes, we are here in the region because this is a market that we're very excited about.
And just tell me, when you look at, again, somewhere like London, there's been some opposition, as you say, some of these old spokes from taxi unions and people like that. what do you say to people like that who say there is a challenge here for employment as well? Do you say it's like when we had the horse and cart, when the first cars came along, we have to go with technology, or is there a response that you have to that?
I think it's both and. I think that there's going to be a transition over time. We do see labor shortages in different parts of the world. We see aging populations in certain job categories. And at Waymo, we see the sort of introduction of a host of jobs that didn't exist 5 years ago, some of which didn't exist 2 years ago. And so that's going to continue to grow as well.
Well, good. You didn't give too much away, but I'm delighted that you're in the region, and let's see what happens over the coming months and years. But a huge round of applause for Tekedra Mawakana.
Thank you so much. Thank you.